Yeah, so this is exciting. I've never really talked to a big group of people about my art before. Usually it's been kind of one-on-one or just come across people who have questions. So I'm really happy that Lisa and everyone at the Van Righ Center kind of gave me this opportunity to show my work here and talk about everything. So yeah, thanks for that to start off. I'm going to try and avoid getting all awkward like this is an interview or something. So I'm just going to kind of give a background of my work and how I got started and everything, and then I'm going to just open it up to questions because I feel like this works better as more of a discussion-based talk. So I come from a really small town called Bradford, Ontario. It's near Barrie and Newmarket. Yeah? Okay, nice. Hometown. So yeah, I was not raised in like a metropolis or like a really artsy town or anything like that. It was kind of backwoods, small town, stuff like that. And when I was a kid, I really liked to draw. Drawing was definitely my favorite. I started off with being interested in like mythological things, like most little girls are into like princesses and mermaids and unicorns, and I got this weird penchant for Greek mythology at one point, and all I would draw was like the Trojan War and like the Trojan horse. I was really into the Iliad and the Odyssey. So yeah, so I started off kind of drawing just fantasy things and things from my imagination and mythology and stuff like that. And later on I got into cartooning in a big way. So I would draw cartoons of like my favorite characters, and I remember just sitting at tables and endlessly copying printouts of cartoons that I liked, just to get the facial expressions right and to try and recreate that. So a lot of my early skills then were based on copying cartoon artists that I like. So I went to a high school. It wasn't an arts high school. A lot of people I know came from an arts high school, but my background is a lot more kind of general, like it was a public school. And then I really got into the band Queen, and all I would draw was the members of Queen. And that actually really helped my drawing skills, because that kind of hero worship really, it really inspired me to just keep drawing, and I realized that like I was quite good at that. So I just drew so many pictures of Freddie Mercury that yeah, so so I got really good at drawing like people and faces and you know, concert scenes and things like that. And around the same time I kind of got into painting a little. I started digital painting, which is when you have a tablet, if you guys aren't familiar with them. Not like a tablet where you can just, you know, carry around or take pictures at concerts or whatever people do with them, but a touch-sensitive tablet with an electronic pencil. So you can easily draw on a screen with that if you're using Photoshop. So it's really, it's faster than traditional painting, for sure, because you can just open up a palette and pick a color and draw like that. So that was actually one of my first major exposures to things like color mixing and painting textures, because you can do so many things with a tablet these days. Like, the technology is amazing, and you can kind of make any shapes and lines and colors and things that you want on Photoshop. So even though I'm a traditional painter now mostly, a lot of my painting basis is grounded in electronic painting, or like kind of graphic design in that way. So during high school I took art classes, and because it wasn't an arts high school, I had to kind of pursue art classes elsewhere. So I went to Newmarket, Ontario on Wednesday nights or so to take classes at a private art studio. And I got some commissions here and there. I got, you know, I would sell prints sometimes to Queen fans, because that was once again, my art at the time. And the time came to kind of pick a university setting. And I was sure I wanted to go to school, but I didn't really know what to be. When I was a kid, I kind of cycled through, I'm going to be a princess, I'm going to be an artist, I'm going to be a marine biologist, because my sister wanted to. And then I came back to art because I was fairly, decent at my other classes, but art was the thing that I really enjoyed. So I put together my portfolio for Queen's and for U of T, and they were doing a joint program with Sheridan College, and I got accepted both places, and I was going to go to U of T up until like the very last minute, like summer or so. And then I just kind of changed my mind. Queen's offered the BFA program, the Bachelor of Fine Arts, as opposed to the BA at U of T, and there were a couple other things that sort of just drew me to Queen's instead. I did a road trip with one of my friends who was sure she was going to go here, and I kind of fell in love with the town because it's really beautiful here, and the campus is just, I'm sure you all get that wonderful feeling when you're walking around campus, and it's just like a really awesome environment to be in. So I decided to go to Queen's for art, and first year was super exciting. We kind of got here, and a lot of us were unsure of ourselves. Like, we come from a lot of different backgrounds. Some people came from an arts high school and were really familiar with kind of the arts world already, and some of us were not. So the way the BFA program is structured is that we take 2 years in the program, in the 4-year program, to experiment with many different things. So we started off with painting, right? We started off in painting. And it was kind of interesting because they were kind of like, here, buy so many dollars worth of materials, and kind of get painting. So that was, for a lot of us, it was our first real exposure to painting, for sure. I had done a small bit. I had done a lot of acrylic painting in high school, but I had never really oil painted. I had done like maybe 1 or 2 pieces. So suddenly we had to start doing that, and that was a little scary for a lot of people. It was kind of like a learn by being thrown into it environment. But I think a lot of us really enjoyed the program. It's very, very intensive. We moved into different sections of those modules, right? So for 2 years we did painting, we did printmaking, which is, oh man, I could do like an entire talk on just printmaking because there's so many different kinds of prints that you can do, and so many different mediums you can use and things like that. We did a sculpture module, where we mostly worked with clay and plaster. There was a required woodshop component, so we can all do carpentry now, which is a really good skill to have, actually, because I make, for instance, with these paintings that are in here now, the big ones like this, I made the structures for those, so the wooden backings, and we learned to stretch canvas over them, we prepare them, and basically learned to be very, very self-sufficient as an artist. So in our second year, they canceled the BFA, right? First year? Okay, the end of first year, right? In the end of first year, they canceled the BFA program, which I'm sure a lot of you probably remember. There was a big ruckus about that, because we definitely did not want that to happen. And, we kicked and hollered enough that they brought it back the following year, but for the 3rd year, currently, there is no class. So those spaces in Ontario Hall are used up a bit more by other classes. It's less artists in there than there were 4 years ago. So that was a little bit discouraging. I know a couple of people were really worried about the program, and so our class numbers dropped. We only started off with about 30 people, and by now we were down to 20. So what I find though is that the 20 of us that remain are really close. We're tight-knit and we know each other's practices really well. So it's actually really interesting, I found, to walk into like here and have somebody talk to me about my art and talk about like the feelings and just give me their perception of the paintings, because I find in the BFA program we talk technically a lot. It's like, oh, what should I use for this, or what's this composition, and we ask each other's advice a lot. So yeah, we're a really tight-knit group. We know each other's art very, very well at this point. So, and I think we're like, the cancellation didn't really affect us much. It's obviously upsetting to be missing a year in Ontario Hall, but the 20 of us are really strong artists, I think. And they brought it back, obviously. So there's second years and first years in Ontario Hall again, and hopefully we never have to deal with the cancellation of the BFA again. So that was very, very, it was a trying time for us, but we're through it now. So when I started painting in Ontario Hall, I definitely fell in love with it. So in third year, you're supposed to concentrate. You pick 2 areas to specialize in. So I picked printmaking and painting. And that's not to say I don't like sculpture or time-based media, which is the other option. I love sculpture, but I like to kind of keep it as my hobby rather than the thing that I'm studying and the thing that I do more full-time, like painting. So I picked those 2. I mostly picked printmaking just to learn about the different things, because you can print on wood, you can print on stone, you can do all sorts of photographic things. It's like a super fascinating area to specialize in. And between first and fourth year, currently, my art really shifted. So before I was doing a lot of like portraits, as I mentioned, and things like that. And I started to become a lot more interested in settings, in places. And what I found was actually, after joining the BFA here, was that it was so intensive, and I was so used to constantly looking at a painting and looking at an image and trying to just like take it apart in my mind, like the composition, how I would paint it, how I would do this, which colors to mix and things like that, that it actually kind of changed the way I view the world. And I'm not saying that like metaphorically, I mean that one day I kind of woke up and was looking around my room and was seeing it from like a painter's perspective as opposed to the way I had seen it before. And it was very odd, because I was suddenly looking around my room and seeing things divided into lines and planes and colors, and how I would color mix the room, if that makes any sense. It was very, very, very odd. So that gave me a really profound respect for very mundane things. Ever since then, I've been really focused on the beauty that can be found in mundane things. So what I think is that the realm of fine art for so long has been very focused on beautiful things, and typically beautiful things like flowers or sunsets and landscapes and things like that. But I became very interested in things like brick walls, a very drab sort of, let me see if I can find one of, things like this. I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but I was just walking into my friend's apartment. I was looking at the parking garage, And I just thought that it was so interesting that this concrete, very drab structure actually had so many different lights and colors in it. So I definitely started to focus more on the mundane than on typical beauty in my art. And more recently, starting about last year, traveling back and forth from Bradford to Kingston is about a 3-hour drive. It works out to 4 or 5 hours if I'm switching between the bus and like the subway and getting picked up and things like that. So I really became fascinated with that time spent while traveling. So when you're sitting on a bus and you're surrounded by strangers, it's a very odd kind of introspective feeling you get. And I was really fascinated by the feeling that all of these people are strangers. These are all people in their own kind of private minds, just thinking about stuff. They've got their earbuds in, they're listening to music, they're playing on their computers, or they're looking out the window. And yet we're sharing this very intimate space. Like you're probably, if you're on the megabus, you're probably sitting next to somebody, right? So that really fascinated me, and that's where pieces like the buses started to come from. And they're definitely a lot more atmospheric than like, I don't really have an agenda. A lot of my art is just about atmosphere rather than political agendas and things like that. I'm not that concerned with trying to argue for very specific things with my paintings. I think that other people can do that much better than I can. So I just really like to evoke a feeling in my viewer and try and see if I can get the same response from them that I get while I'm looking at that scene. So all of my paintings are, I think all of them pretty much, are based on photography that I've done myself. I don't really use other people's work at all as a reference. And usually I'll walk around town, and anyone who knows me knows that I might pull out my camera at any point just to take a picture of like a wall or something, like something very weird and bizarre, and I don't always make sense with it, but and I find a lot of artists do that. They kind of stop what they're doing. They're just like, wait, the light is perfect there, and they want to snap that and kind of capture a moment that's evocative. So that's pretty much what I'm trying to do with these pieces from last semester. So the four big ones that I pointed out earlier, those are all from last semester, and they were my final work. These smaller ones are from earlier, but I felt that they had the same sort of vibe about them. This one is of my friend Michael, who's also in the BFA, and that was taken in Kingston. And this smaller one of the gentleman on the bus kind of started off this whole, all of these thoughts I had about traveling and about kind of being in an intimate kind of traveling space with people and being very introspective. So those aren't people I know. That was, it's kind of shameful to admit, but I was like pretending I was texting, but actually taking reference photos of people. But I don't think they really cared. One of them was asleep, and the other was, yeah. And they could be anybody, So that's another thing, is I like to paint very, very vague people, like people in shadow, people who are turned away, and things like that. I also like to paint portraits. But I find that the more like darkness is in a photo, the more mystery there is, the more variable it can be. So it could kind of connect to anybody, such as this bedroom scene that I've painted here. That could be anybody's room, really. It's just a mussed-up bed and a curtain and things like that. So they're really more about the mood and trying to make a connection with my viewer and things like that. So right now I'm a lot more focused on on trying to transition my styles a little bit. So I find that a lot of painters, when they start studying, they quite easily take to a photo representative or kind of a photographic quality to their paintings. So they try really hard to pretty much copy a photo, make something look exactly as it is in real life. And that for sure takes a lot of skill. But I find that I'm starting to become a little bit bored with just outright copying a photograph, because I feel like you could maybe just blow up a photograph and get sort of the same idea. So right now I'm trying to take more advantage of what I can do with paint, because oil paint is a really kind of magical substance. You can thin it down, you can make it really thick and impasto, like those really textured paintings that you see in museums and like Jackson Pollock's and things like that. Like, you can do so much with it. So right now I'm trying to take more of an impressionistic approach to painting, which means if you're familiar with art history and people like Monet, who's my favorite, they are very loose with their brush strokes, and they are very good at painting light, which I am very interested in, if you can tell from the paintings. And just focusing on getting a quicker impression of a scene through paint rather than being very nitpicky, because a lot of my my paintings and my prints and things from last year, the year before, are very exact. They have a lot of architectural lines and things in them. So right now I'm trying to get less nitpicky about those and move into more of a loose style. And right now, like most of the people in my fourth year are, a lot of people are focusing more on getting their work out there. So it's a really exciting time we live in for art. For instance, like a lot of us have websites now, whereas I think a few years ago, this is a fairly recent thing for like young artists and new graduates to have a really strong social media presence and to try and make a name for themselves and get out to various people. And I find that the internet is a really interesting new way to kind of deal in the art world. So you have Twitter and you have Instagram and you have all of these options for people discovering you, pretty much. And whatever you're interested in, you can just search for that, and you can find an artist who is alive today who's working on something that you're interested in. It's just kind of a really fascinating place to be in the art world, this kind of mix of technology and traditional art, because most of us work traditionally in the BFA, like we're doing prints by hand, or we're painting, or we're sculpting by hand. Yet we have this really technologically savvy kind of generation. So that's kind of where the art business world is right now, and I think that's a pretty interesting aspect of it. So yeah, and I have to shout out to my boyfriend Dan, who made the website for me. He did a lot of good work on that. And yeah, that's kind of where I am right now. I'm looking at expanding my kind of, I don't want to say fan base because that sounds really weird, but just the people who are familiar with my art and the people who are getting a good connection from my art. I'm taking a year off after I graduate. I think I graduate in June or May or June. Do you guys know? It's June 10th or something. And from then on, I'm going to take a year off and just paint and focus on painting and like working and maybe do some reading. I haven't read anything in like years, because the Queen's program is very, very intensive. So that'll be very interesting. And from there, I want to pursue an MFA. so a master's program, and I don't know where that will take me. And for sure I like teaching. I've taught before. I've taught kind of like one-on-one art classes with people my age, and I've also taught like ages 5 through 13 various art practices. So, and I enjoy it. So hopefully someday I'll have like my own studio, or I'll have my own art classes, or something like that. And yeah, and I hope you all can drop by when that happens. Yeah, I don't know, how long is that? What's my time? Well, that's pretty much all I can talk about me. I was thinking I would open the room up to questions, or we can flip through photos, or anything you guys are interested in, but that's where I'm at right now. Go for it.
I want to see a Queen fan photo, or a fan painting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But really, that's pretty interesting that you were drawing like a rock band.
Yeah.
And then moved into painting. I mean, there's lots of dark, so I can see some connections that you might have picked up, but it's kind of interesting. Was there another phase in between, or did you kind of go right from rock and roll to?
I was doing a lot of portraits of, and it wasn't just Queen. It was David Bowie too. So no, it was a lot of different people. I was definitely very concerned with portraits of people. I would do a lot of portraits of my friends and things too. And I don't really remember. I did various like work. I did a lot of different work. My high school art teacher was very good for getting us to use a lot of different mediums. Like we did wire sculpture, and we did drawings, and we did painting. We did all sorts of stuff. Like we did even murals in his class. So we had like a mural competition and things like that. And he, for homework, he wanted us to do a drawing every day. So at the end of our year, whoever was actually doing their schoolwork had a sketchbook full of drawings. And when you have that sort of assignment to do, you start looking kind of anywhere for inspiration. So yeah, I was drawing my dog, and I was drawing things around my house, and just like pencils and anything I could find. So that kind of gave me experience in a lot of different subject matters. And then in first year, we started off with painting the scene of that our teacher, our professor put out on a table. It was like this really colorful scarf tablecloth, and like a bunch of like different colors, like a rainbow scene. It was a lot of different colors, and it was just to get us to learn how to paint, how to mix colors and how to show different lights, and to just paint basically for those of us who hadn't learned to paint before. So it was like the perfect still life to teach us how to paint every color. And from then on, she kind of opened it up and said, I want you to put together a composition and then paint that. So I started looking towards my photography, because I was like, I don't know what to paint. So I started, I did a lot of walking around campus and taking photos of things. So from there, you know, I was taking pictures of like Ontario Hall, because it's beautiful, and things like that. And from there I started to kind of realize that, you know, walls are really interesting, and like really kind of just buildings really fascinated me. So I think that's kind of the missing link in that. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else have a question for me? Okay.
Do you want to show us some of the other images that you have?
Do you have some?
I'm not sure how to phrase the question. I'm thinking of your experience as a student and the relationship you have with your teacher.
Yeah.
Is it part of her mandate to help you understand what it is that you are looking at when you decide what you want to paint, or does she dwell mostly on technical things?
I think it really depends on which professor you get. So in first year, our professor, she kind of, like I said, she kind of set us up with our materials, and she set us up with a scene, and then basically told us to learn by painting. She didn't really teach us a lot of the, you know, the nitpicky kind of techniques that you would get from like a classical sort of painting class, and it was more like keep trying until you get it, you know. And she was, as far as I remember, she was pretty open to us picking our own subject matter, but she would want to make changes about the composition, for instance. So, but she was open to our own, she was pretty open to our own stylistic interpretations of scenes. Like, naturally in a painting class, some people are gonna have like really, you know, like really smooth brush strokes, and some people will want to blend, and some people will want to be more impressionistic and things like that. So she was quite open to that, as long as she had kind of approved of our image beforehand. And there was a couple times where she, let me see if I can find it. This was one of my pieces from first year. It's really hard to see, but, and it's on 3 panels, so it's quite large. And I remember I was like half done it, and she walked over and she's like, oh, I had all of the lights, all of the street lights culminating in a separate point, like over here. And she was like, oh, here we go. And she was like, you need to change that. And I'm like, really? So I had worked at all that, and she's like, make them go to the middle. And I'm like, oh boy. So yeah, that was a lot of lines to change. And I was quite angry at her, but in the end I understood that I hadn't really gotten it approved correctly when I started painting, so I should have gone and said, like, what do you think of this first, before I kind of jumped into it. And in the end I do agree with her, I like it better this way than it was before. So, so yeah, she was fairly open. My advisor right now, I really have to kind of argue with her, because she's definitely very, very knowledgeable about all sorts of different techniques, but I'm also a very, very stubborn person. So when I see a painting that I want to paint for my thesis work, there's always a struggle there if she doesn't like it, because while I really want to paint it, it might not be like the right thing for my thesis right now. So I find myself arguing with her a lot, wanting to do certain things. So, but it's a good thing. She pushes me to paint in ways that I am very uncomfortable with, and to use colors that I'm not familiar with, and I do find that it's been better for me in the long run to do that, and not to get really comfortable in like one painting style, you know? So
that's really interesting, Iris, that you must care a great deal about what you're painting and how, because in terms of working relationships, you're so easygoing. And our impression, I think, is that you're just so accommodating.
Yeah.
So it must be something you care a lot about,
Yeah.
if you're really, you know, challenging her.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's something in there, right, that
yeah, for sure.
you need to stick with. I don't know. That's really interesting to hear you say that that you're sort of having.
Yeah, I think
Walking
it's
horns.
you know, when I'm here, I'm cooking soup for an hour, you know. But if I'm working on a painting for weeks, I need to be into it, and I need to be inspired to work on it. So, and I find that with my own photographs, I have a deep personal connection to it. A lot of the time I'm painting something very close to me. So that one, I pulled it up on the screen because it was kind of hidden. But the one on the wall there, this is a scene from, my family is from Saskatchewan, my extended family. So every couple of years we do a big road trip to Saskatchewan. And this is just sort of a picture at one of my family's cabins on a lake. in Saskatchewan, which I know is an oxymoron or whatever, but the one, this lady here is my mom actually, but you can't really tell is the thing. Like I said, I like to keep things vague. But because I know that it's my family and I know this place, I've been to this place, it's really special to me. So I like to kind of bring in that connection between my own personal feelings towards a thing, but also something that a viewer can appreciate. So, yeah.
Can I ask about the painting of the boats?
Sure.
And
This one?
yeah, I love that painting.
Yeah, actually, my friend Sean's mother has this painting. This was, so I spent, after I lived in residence, I didn't really want to leave Kingston, so I stayed here during the summers, and I moved last summer, but for 3 summers, I think, or 2. Either way, I spent a couple of summers in Kingston, and it's just so beautiful here in the summer. I feel like the students here should, like, if they live far away, they should try to spend a summer here because it's so much different than this February life we have right now, you know? So this is, I think it's the Yacht Club. Yes, that would be Kingston Yacht Club on the side of that boat. And I was living really close to that, so I would just, every day I'd like to walk around the lake because it's just such a really beautiful place. And I was very interested, I mentioned Monet, I got really into Monet at this point, so I was trying to do Monet water there, pretty much.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that one. So I just, I like the boats, and I like the time of day. The time of day was a really kind of beautiful point. So I did that a lot. I'll just snap kind of photos that I like and places that are close to me and